Jaya Jaya Sri Janava Baba Girivaradari Kyashora Nandana Bhaja Janaranjana Kyashora Nandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vishnupada, Pramsapri Dakacharya, Shotashati Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Samaraj, Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON Founder Chaya, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Vishnupada, Pramsapri Dakacharya, Shotashati Sri Srimad, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, Prabhupada Ki, Rathraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Vanande Alibo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 12, titled Vritasura's Glorious Death. Texts number 9 and 10. 9 doesn't have a purport, so we'll be reading both. I'll just read the Sanskrit for 9, and then repeat that for 10. Oja saho balam pranam amritam ritume vacha tam agnaya jano hetum atmanam anyate jadam Yitada rumayinari Yita patra mayo merga evam bhutani maghavan Isha tantrani vidibaho Yata daru mayinari Yata patra mayo merka Evam bhutani maghavan Isha tantrani vidibaho Yata daru mayinari Yata patra mayo merga Evam bhutani maghavan Isha tantrani vidibaho. Word for text 10. Yata, just as. Daru mai, made of wood. Nari, a woman. Yata, just as. Patra maya, made of leaves. Murga, an animal. Evam, thus. Bhutani, all things. Maghavan, O King Indra. Isha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tantrani, depending upon. Vidi, please know. Baho, O Sir. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Our sensory prowess, mental power, bodily strength, living force, immortality, and mortality are all subject to the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not knowing this, foolish people think the dull material body to be the cause of their activities. O King Indra, as a wooden doll that looks like a woman or as an animal made of grass and leaves, cannot move or dance independently, but depends fully on the person who handles it. All of us dance according to the desire of the Supreme Controller, the Personality of Godhead. No one is independent. Purport. This is confirmed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Ekale Ishvara Krishna Arasaba Britya Yare Yache Nachaya Se Tache Kare Nirtaya. Lord Krishna, alone is the supreme controller, and all others are his servants. They dance as he makes them to do so. We are all servants of Krishna. We have no independence. We are dancing according to the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But out of ignorance and illusion, we think we are independent of the Supreme Will. Therefore, it is said, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anandir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Controller. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all, and he has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. Om Ganachamandasya Gananjana Shvakaya Chakshmatina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The analogy given in this verse that the living entity is like a wooden doll, or in, I guess, grass sculpture of an animal, and cannot move independently, is very uh, instructive. It specifically says cannot dance independently. Uh, because the living entity, especially in the human form of life, but uh, really in all forms of life, has all sorts of plans, all sorts of desires that we wish to fulfill. It is actually what keeps us in the material world, is this desire to enjoy in different ways according to the modes of material nature. Because the various living entities are covered by these modes in varying degrees, there are multifarious ways of enjoyment. The sunflowers, for example, their plans for enjoyment is just looking at the sun. So throughout the day, they just turn their head to always look at the sun as it moves throughout the sky. The uh, various other plants as well have their plans for how to enjoy. The animals that we see throughout the um, world, especially here at Gita Nagari, where we are trying to live, at least somewhat, a more natural life uh, than in the cities where they've cut down and bulldozed and paved over all of the trees. But you see, for example, the squirrels burying the various nuts and things that they collect, making plans for their own enjoyment later on, specifically in the winter when not so much is growing. And then, of course, in the human form of life, there are so many plans for how to enjoy ourselves. There's the entirety of civilization, more or less, uh, expressed in different modes. Even the desire to live a very peaceful life in accordance with nature and to consider philosophical or scientific things deeply. It's still enjoyment, still plans for our own sense gratification, but that is, of course, in the mode of goodness. Once you get into the modes of passion and ignorance, then things really get interesting. We see so many uh, cities, so much commerce going on, All of this is the quest for enjoyment in the modes of passion and ignorance. Always increase, 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 and destroy, destroy, destroy. And even if by some imagination, the desire to destroy, as far as it is, the expressed desire is not there, it still occurs because the modes of nature are practically insurmountable. And if one is acting in the mode of ignorance, destruction will be there. So the mm, various industries that we see operating in the world, these multinational corporations, the uh, global manufacturing, etc., were conceived, as most things are, in the mode of passion. Grow, grow, grow. Create, create, create. But we see, practically speaking, so many different layers of destruction, even though this was not the intended effect. There is, of course, the environmental consequences of such activities uh, that is destroying the carefully balanced system of the earth. So balanced, actually, that no human being, despite their pride in their intellect, can actually make such a perfectly balanced system. It has to come from God. But even beyond the ecological uh, disasters, there's also the psychological disasters. The modern way of life, based on the modes of passion and ignorance, totally destroy the well-being and the peace of mind of the human being who is partaking in these things. And this is actually, in many cases, by design. And our current economic system does not work if people are satisfied. It is required that people continuously spend, spend, spend to keep the economy going. And it's not enough that they spend on necessities. So the human being actually needs very little to live. It's described in the second canto that you need, approximately 6 feet of space, uh, some leaves to soften the ground a little bit, and that's basically it. Uh, you can use your arms for pillows, and that is really the necessities of human life. So one can, uh, go and forage in the forest for food. Uh, of course, today's government is so demoniac that if one tries to do this, you might get uh, fined for collecting without a license or uh, all sorts of other things like that. If you try to do it even on government land, which should be available for people who want to live the life of a rishi and actually try to perfect their life in that way. So these plan-making facilities in general lead to mm, destruction and distress. It is advised in this verse to dance as Krishna wants us to dance. This actually isn't the only time in Prabhupada's writing uh, where he uses this analogy. of dancing as Krishna wants us to dance. I was actually reading. Hmm? Yeah, so I was actually reading the other day somewhere. Do you have an idea of where? Hmm. Oh yeah, there. That wasn't the one I was thinking of. But, so it looks like he uses this analogy a lot. The place where I was reading it was in Krishna book, the Rasa Leela. So, uh, there's the discussion of the intimate pastimes between Krishna and the gopis, and Prabhupada is there explaining doing your service. Uh, so, and he's using this analogy of dancing according to the way that Krishna wants you to dance. Because this is actually devotional service, is seeing what Krishna wants and trying to please him in that way, letting Krishna be in charge of the outcome of things. We, of course, have to endeavor in various ways, but the result is fully dependent on Krishna. And if he wishes to give something, then you'll get it. And if not, then, uh, well, then you have a choice, right? You could either just accept that Krishna is the well-wisher of all living entities, and that if he desires that we should not have something, then it is not for our benefit to have that thing, and simply try to be peaceful. Because actually, the distress in material life doesn't come from not having things. It comes from the hankering for things that we do not have. One could be extremely renounced and be very happy. Or I should say, one could have nothing and be very happy if one is extremely renounced. Or one could have nothing and just be lamenting all the time if one is attached and hankering for those things. It's described that a poor person who remains poor their entire life doesn't suffer so much due to the effects of poverty because simply they're used to it. But a rich person who has become destitute suffers very greatly, practically every moment of the day, because they're always thinking of how they enjoyed when they had their wealth. Uh, and then through circumstances or mismanagement or some other reason, they lost all of their wealth. And then, they're practically inconsolable. So one should actually understand what it means to uh, dance with, to dance under the direction of Krishna. The Rasa Leela, especially, is one such pastime where there are many misunderstandings of how to apply or properly uh, understand it, how to properly apply the principles taught there. Of course, we see this kind of in the wider Indian culture sometimes, where they take these pastimes as just the lusty activities of young boys and young girls. Uh, but actually, it is so far beyond that. I was talking with a devotee yesterday, the feast for Lord Nityananda, and this quote from Prabhupada was brought up that if one is free, totally free of sex desire, then one is 50% liberated. So one can think how forceful sex desire is in the living entity. The entire material creation practically is moving under the control of sex desire. But getting rid of that only gets you 50% to liberation. And that's just liberation. That's not even, Vaikunta or serving in Dwarka or Ayodhya, what to speak of the pastimes of the gopis. And then there's another way that this idea of the Vraj Bhakti, the pastimes or the mood of the residents of Vrindavan is applied or misapplied, which is sometimes is likely more common in the association of devotees than the other kind of Sahajyaism, which is saying, this attitude of, oh, I can do whatever I want and it's all spontaneous and I don't have to follow any of the rules and regulations and ways of doing things that was given to us by Srila Prabhupada because the mood of the gopis is spontaneous. But Prabhupada explains in the Nectar of Devotion that actually this mood in conjugal love exhibited by the gopis is only reached after very seriously following the regulative principles of devotional service, of sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means being very careful about the rules and regulations. It is not that we just apply the practice of devotional service however we want. And we can get the same results. Because actually, I was speaking of the various modes of nature that we are in. And it's not that when we enter devotional service, that we automatically become free of these modes. We actually form devotional service in the modes of nature. Lord Kapila describes this in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He describes that pure, unalloyed devotional service is done purely for the satisfaction of Krishna. But there are other ways to do devotional service as well. There's devotional service in the mode of goodness, where Lord Kapila Dev explains that when a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrities of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. So this is actually a level that is practical for us neophyte devotees to aspire to. Of course, we should aspire for pure devotional service, but when we are still in the contaminated stage, we can at least come to the mode of goodness. And this activity, this devotional service in the mode of goodness, is one where the various rules of sadhana are actually followed, but the motive is to free ourselves from the various miseries that are incumbent on us by the mixing of our karma, of the results of our fruitive activities. Lord Kapila Dev further explains that the worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with a motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. And Prabhupada explains in the purport, he gives a definition of a separatist. He says that a separatist is one who sees his interests as separate from that of the Supreme Lord. Mixed devotees, or devotees in the modes of passion or ignorance, think that the interest of the Supreme Lord is supplying the orders of the devotee. The interest of such devotees is to draw from the Lord as much as possible for their sense gratification. This is the separatist mentality. So if one is thinking uh, that the deities should be on my program, of course, uh, one can understand that all 9 processes of devotional service can be done in these 3 modes, and mixtures of these 3 modes. Uh, but in my mind, as since one of my main services is serving the deities, uh, my and it's mentioned in this verse here. If one thinks that the deities should be on my program, I will deal with them however I want. Uh, I'll deal with them with whatever attitude there is. And yes, I'm doing so much service, and everybody should see how much service that I'm doing and praise me for it. One should understand that this service is very motivated and is in the mode of passion. That the mm, worship done in that way is primarily primarily focused not on the pleasure of the deities, but on the pleasure of the worshiper. Uh, and actually, if one worships in this way, one will very quickly become dissatisfied with one's service. Prabhupada says that if one doesn't have the right attitude in serving in this way, the deities will go from vigraha to galagraha, from the form, from the murti of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, simply a burden. One will start to think, why is my spiritual master giving me this initiation where I am just burdened with worshiping these deities? It was a very uh, materially mm, mixed way of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then Lord Kapila, even more, says devotional service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, and angry, and who is a separatist, is considered to be in the mode of darkness. That is the mode of ignorance. And, this is a very unsatisfying way to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can be serving the uh, deity or serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead in any way, in any of the 9 processes of devotional service. But if it is mixed with the mode of ignorance, then it is a very dangerous position because uh, one will eventually, with these qualities of envy, pride, violence, and anger, one will eventually start to offend devotees. And once one starts doing that, then then things just go down from there. Uh, Offending devotees is, of course, known as the mad elephant offense because the uh, Supreme Personality of Godhead cares actually far more if one's devotees are offended rather than if he himself is offended. This is explained in the third canto of the pastime between the Kumaras and Jai and Vijay. Because if one commits some offense in serving the deities, some form of seva aparad, by mistake, or if one is extremely mentally distressed and misses something, of course it is not a good thing, but Krishna doesn't take it so seriously, especially in Kali Yuga. Although it should be notified that if one is negligent in serving the deities or thinks, oh, I don't have to follow the rules and regulations, it actually turns from seva aparad to nam aparad, uh, because one is committing sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. But if one offends devotees, then one's spiritual life can be very much uh, hampered by this aparad, by this inebriety. So we should understand that it is not just because we are living with devotees that we are performing pure devotional service. We should actually understand the process of devotional service and how to properly apply it. And if we find ourselves overcome by the lower modes, we should attempt as much as possible to come to the platform of, at the very least, the mode of goodness. And even if we can't come to that platform, at least the desire should be there. Sometimes through our own conditioning, uh, or through other things. Usually it's our own conditioning. It's very difficult to rise above the lower modes of material nature. Maya is practically insurmountable uh, to the living entity, but at least the desire should be there. And if one actually does have this sincere desire that is sustained in any way, Damodar will help in overcoming the material energy and bringing you to him if that's actually what you want. If you want to just be on your own program and do your own thing and not engage properly with the process of devotional service, then Damodar will let you do that. You have so many plans of your own, you can go try to fulfill them and see how you like it. And then when you're ready to get with the program, Damodar will be there. But just in the meantime, you will be uh, buffeted around by the modes of the material energy. Uh, so we should try very sincerely and very intelligently to actually examine the way that we are performing devotional service, which is Prabhupada gave the analogy of a razor's edge of what actual bhakti is. So we should try to very intelligently examine our own lives and how we are approaching the 9 processes of devotional service and see if we can try to come to pure bhakti, unmotivated devotional service. Or if not that, then at least to the stage of sadhana bhakti in the mode of goodness. So I will end here. If there are any questions, comments, intentions, diatribes, etc. Do you have anything, Prabhu?
I know I missed the verse that it was specifically, but I can kind of gather from the context of the
Mhm.
class. An interesting class, really nice class. Um, I guess one question is this, that, you mentioned this at one point too, that just because Krishna is arranging things doesn't mean that we don't have to make an endeavor.
Mhm.
And there's also a sense in which we have to make an endeavor to please Krishna, and that does kind of come from our own uh, independence. Like I'm thinking at one time, Srila Prabhupada was asked by this devotee, he was like, I'm just trying to surrender to you. What can I do to please you, Srila Prabhupada? And then Prabhupada said to him, so what do you want to do to please me?
Mhm.
And this devotee went on to create this classic mridanga, and Prabhupada was very pleased.
Yes.
Became very useful in the movement. So sometimes, how do we know when Krishna wants us to make that step towards him in terms of determining what we're going to do to serve him, or the spiritual master, or Srila Prabhupada. I mean, Srila Prabhupada himself was very independent in that sense. His godbrothers didn't approve of what he was doing. They thought he was acting completely independently. His guru had said, he'll do everything himself.
Mhm.
So sometimes, when do we know when to make that step ourselves, and when do we know when we are when it's kind of bordering on making our own plans, that we're not properly acting according to Krishna's desire.
All right, thank you. So for those who might not have heard, the question was, how do we know when we are endeavoring and making our own plans, and when we are endeavoring for uh, Krishna, as in when we're making plans to please Krishna in a proper way? And you kind of alluded to the proper uh, way of knowing in when you were speaking, which is taking guidance from seniors, specifically the spiritual master, but also the local management and things like that. We are very blessed here to have uh, two surrendered souls leading us, Dhruva and Parijata, who are arranging things on the farm according to the desires of both their spiritual master and our local GBC, who happens to be my spiritual master. Uh, so one can always approach senior devotees and discuss one's plans for devotional service. And this is one aspect of revealing the mind, which is one of the activities favorable or one of the loving relations between devotees. One can go to a senior devotee who has been around a while, seen a lot of different things done, and say, Prabhu, I have these plans for devotional service. And I'm thinking of implementing it like this, like that. There's might be these problems. Do you have any ideas? I think this would work really well. What do you think of that? And then see what they say. Ultimately, of course, it's the spiritual master who is uh, taking our service and offering it to Krishna. Because we offer service to our spiritual master, and the spiritual master offers service to his spiritual master, etc. But the uh, spiritual masters in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, in general, appreciate it when you cooperate with kind of the local program. So it's very good to think of ways to improve, but kind of taking guidance is necessary. So hopefully that answered something. I see. Speaking of taking guidance from senior devotees, Tarka Prabhu has his virtual hand raised. So if you would like to say something.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a great class.
Thank you.
Lots of nice points that inspired all kinds of thoughts for me, lots for me to contemplate during my day. You mentioned that the material nature is extremely difficult to overcome,
Hmm.
but that we can get Krishna's help. And so what might otherwise be impossible becomes possible.
Hmm.
Um, Krishna describes this himself in the seventh chapter of Bhagavad Gita, um, text 14. He says, Davyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite, that this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. He says, easily. There is
Hmm.
similarly, there's a verse in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the 14th chapter. Samashritaye para palava plavam mahatpadam punya yasho marare bhavam budhir vatsya padam 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 yadvi padam nate sham. Um, for those who have accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation, and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the Mura demon. The ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoofprints. Their goal is Parampadam, Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step.
Hmm.
So, material world, of course, is very precarious. There's danger at every step. Padam padam yadvi padam. Danger at every step. Very dangerous place. Very precarious. And the material nature very difficult to overcome. But for those who have surrendered to Krishna in devotional service, um, that great ocean of the material nature, which is otherwise impossible to overcome, becomes practically reduced to the water contained in a calf's hoofprint, which is very tiny, and there's no difficulty to step over that. So, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you can easily cross beyond it. Um, so, yeah, what else did I want to say? There's something else in my mind in connection with this, and it has, I'm having a senior moment, it's gone, but there are other things that also came to my mind. Um, you mentioned that sometimes in the course of attempting to render devotional service, one may experience dissatisfaction, depending
Hmm.
upon the manner in which one executes devotional service. And of course, how one renders devotional service is quite critical to the process. Um, so I'll tell you that there are many devotees, both here in our community and even outside our community, regularly contact me with questions and different issues. Um, and one of the things that I see very often in our own community here at Gita Nagari, devotees express some dissatisfaction. Their mind is disturbed, it's agitated. They aren't settled in their service. They have doubts and questions about their service. They have questions about whether they're being properly engaged or not. They're sometimes they lack faith. They're not even confident that their spiritual master is competent to to
Mm.
give them proper direction and devotional service. Um, but they express in various ways a kind of dissatisfaction that I've been practicing devotional service for some time, and but my mind is disturbed. I'm thinking about going here or there. I'm thinking maybe I need to change my service or change my venue altogether. Maybe I can do
Mhm.
better if I'm somewhere else where I have more association or better association, or I need to change the type of service because I don't think the service that I'm doing, which I've been assigned, is really compatible with my particular psychophysical nature, and so questions like that. But what I also see is that though they're expressing these issues that arise somehow from a feeling of dissatisfaction, they are simultaneously performing devotional service in a manner that should not be expected to be very satisfying. In many cases, these individuals are individuals who um, render service conditionally.
Mm.
They're not content to simply perform devotional service. They will inform their authorities that I'll do this, but I need something in return. I'll render service provided certain demands are met, and in many cases, I'll tell you honestly, I was very surprised to discover this, that there are devotees who will not render service unless they are paid to do their service. Um, Back in the day when Srila Prabhupada was physically present with us, there are many devotees working very hard in devotional service. They were always ecstatic, and not a single one of them ever received a penny in exchange for their service. And in fact, Srila Prabhupada forbid um, paying the devotees because if you're working in exchange for a stipend or some kind of salary or whatever it may be. Is it actually devotional service at all, or are you simply transacting business? Um, so, we understand what pure devotional service is. Srila Rupa Goswami says, "Anya bilashita shunyam yana karma dyanavritam anu kulyena Krishna anu shiram bhaktir uttama." That once you render devotional service, transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. And that's called pure devotional service. Um, and also connected to this, there is in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the second chapter, there is a very important verse. Savaipum samparo dharmo yato bhaktirit hokshuket ahaituk yapratiyata ya yatma suprasidati, that the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So if there is some motivation, um, your service is not going to be satisfying right away.
Mm.
You're going to be dissatisfied. But if devotional service performed without motivation, without a desire for remuneration of some sort, selflessly performed, that service is deeply and completely satisfying, immensely satisfying, like nothing
Mhm.
that anyone experiences ever in material life. One is supremely satisfied by that kind of service, and so satisfied that that feeling of satisfaction dwarfs everything else. It becomes easy to renounce anything because you have within yourself such a great wealth in devotional service. So anyway, my point is that I see devotees that are suffering some discontent, and they're not understanding why. And but it's easy to see why they're dissatisfied in their service. It's because they're performing service conditionally, and they feel that they have to have some stipend. It's not enough that the temple provides for their necessities. They want something more than that, and so the result is that they have compromised the quality of their devotional service, and they're not getting the proper result of their devotional service, and are feeling some dissatisfaction.
Mm.
Um, so I thought I would mention that because it seems to be
Yeah,
a common problem locally, and so here's an opportunity for me to mention this one time, and perhaps a number of individuals can hear it simultaneously. Anyway,
mm,
that's what I had. Thank you very much,
yeah.
Prabhu. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhu. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. I could comment a lot, but I want to give Jambavati Mataji, who has her hand raised, the chance to speak before the door is open.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. I'll try to make
Sorry, Mo.
this really quick. Thank you for class this morning. You
Thank you for
mentioned
attending.
that you mentioned that Srila Prabhupada uses the analogy of dance, making him dance. And
Mm,
I was thinking that when he was, I think he was still on the Jaladuta, but I think it was still docked in Boston. He
mm,
hadn't gotten off yet. And one of the this was in his journal where he was actually speaking to Krishna,
mhm,
and I found uh, the verse where he says, "Oh Lord, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Oh Lord, make me dance as you like." You know, and I think that is like a real expression of humility on his part, in terms of trying to fulfill his spiritual master's desires, and that he was feeling not really worthy of doing it, or if he could do it, but
mm.
he totally surrendered, to his spiritual master. And it's one of the selfless acts of obeying the orders of the spiritual master. So thank you for reminding me of that, and reminding all of us of that. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna. Thank you for your comments. We are at 8 o'clock now, meaning the doors should be opening at any minutes. Thank you all for attending. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.
It's closer to Puja or the
Vikramaditiri.
Nagari, Govinda, Puja, Puja,